Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. It's another time for us to really be able to better understand ourselves, to help ourselves be more successful, better understand people, who we're hiring, who we are, and to help us to make sure that the SLA position, that we help everybody be more successful with that, as well as all this information you can use to be successful in your personal life as well. And so we thank Ray, and we have Adrian, and we have Cam, and Nemesis here. Nemesis has volunteered to use her gap report so we can understand on how to read the gap report and understand in gaps. It's exactly what it means is this: we have gaps from the job compared to who we are. And so what we did is we came together, and we developed a job benchmark. And so this was last week that we came together and we said, okay, if we were the job talking the SLA position, what would the job need? And we then did an assessment as though we were the job speaking. And we then combined and averaged out the assessment. And we're going to look at today is to understand the job benchmark, what the job calls for, and then that'll probably be the last time you see this job benchmark, because you're going to see it then in the gap report, and it's going to show the job benchmark, what the job calls for with talents, how the job motivates, and what ideal behaviors are for the job. And then it will compare the individual. And when it compares the individual to the job, we'll be able to see gaps that will help you. So you'll be able to see your gap report and will help you to understand, hey, where do I need to be better in order to enjoy this job more, in order to be more productive. And so with that, and if any time you guys have any questions, just let me know. We're going to share the and let's make sure, I think I got it there. Can everybody see that page? And it says key characteristics of the position. And
Yes.
can you
Yes.
see that? Okay, great, great. So I'm on page 5. There was some other talk, and again, we'll go through this fairly quickly. These are the results, and this is the job benchmark for the SLA. And basically, what it came out with is that it said the most important characteristics of the SLA position is accountability for results, results through people, authority. And so the SLA basically, and as managers, we play SLA once in a while, if you will. We all have a role at some point that we end up being an SLA, some or all the time. And and our authority, that means the what does this mean to, how much does the SLA have? And they have a significant amount of authority. They work with the customer, and then it's significant risks. And by risk, we mean it's important to the business. And so this job is the job for our business. And so if you're in this role or do this role once in a while and manage, as well, that this is important. And hearing that, does that sound like just the overall key characteristics? Does that sound like, accountability for results, results for people, having lots of authority, and being important to the company as far as risk is concerned? It's important to the company. Does that sound pretty right? Does that sound right on?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. And now we're going to get into, and we have not talked too much about your assessment when you did the trimetrics. And so this is for everybody in the organization, that everybody takes this trimetrics. And yes, we do measure behaviors and the 4 behaviors, and there's a video to understand that. We also measured the 6 motivators, how we are motivated, the language we talk, and we want to better open the communication, the shade of communication with others. And the way that we do that is by understanding their behavior and modifying our behavior with our customers, with each other, with our loved ones, as well as we want to be able to talk their language, understand what they value, what motivates them. And so those we can impact other people. This hierarchy of competencies are the talents and the 25 talents of mankind. Business talents. There's altogether 66 talents, but the key critical talents, and you guys did an excellent job on doing this job benchmark, because a lot of people go, hey, I want this person to be everything, and so when we do the job benchmark, we say, oh, I want this, but you guys did a great job on what's very important, and then also what's important, and some things that aren't as important. And so in this case, that we said the talents. So we each have talents. So you have your talents. And again, we didn't really review talents when we reviewed the assessment, but to understand there are talents within mankind, but you can't see them. You won't know them in an interview or knowing the person. Most of us, don't know what our talents are. And so, but we measured your talents, and now the job is saying, here's the type of talents, competencies, skills that we need, that we would want everybody to have. And number one is personal accountability, self-management, teamwork, goal achievement, diplomacy and tact, resiliency, customer focus, problem solving, and flexibility. Those are the biggest ones. Now, hearing that, what do you think that's pretty accurate on what this job needs?
Definitely.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
great. And see things like that not important, are like employee development coaching. What we're saying here is, to be an SLA, it's not important. For you that are managers, it's real important. But it all depends on what job we're talking about. And in this case, these are the key accountabilities of the job. And so the definition of every one of these, like personal accountability, a measure of the capacity to be answerable for personal actions. In other words, we want the SLA to make sure that they, qualify the buyer. Do they have good enough credit? Are they, credit worthy for the? Is it real gold? Is it authentic? And so we have a lot of this personal accountability with this job, and self-management and teamwork. And again, there the definitions are. They're pretty self-explanatory, what the words are, but the definitions are there. And CAM has this job benchmark. And if you want a copy of the job benchmark, you can have it. Again, we're going to look at the GAP report, which takes the job benchmark, what we're looking at here, comparing it to the SLA, an individual. So it could be an individual that's already employed with us. It could be somebody we're considering to employ. And this way, we're going to be able to understand this person and see whether or not they're capable of doing this job. And because this is what's important to the job. And there's no other tool in the world that can measure talents and the way that this can measure what the person is, and then what the job is, and whether or not there's a good match or not. And so again, going down, looking at the job competencies, looking at the organization's rewards culture. So it's like, so this is culture. This is not about the job per se. This is about the organization. So we were able to, with the job benchmark, understand the culture in the organization. And basically, our culture is that it's heavily driven by theoretical knowledge. again, understanding the different, items that are coming in that are going out, the type of loans that we have. Also, traditional regulatory, which means what are the rules, the regulations? What are the ways that we have to do it? We have ways to detect whether or not it's real or not gold, or we have ways to be able to identify whether this would be a good loan. And so, because of that, we really hone in on the knowledge and the regulatory in our culture. And hearing that, do you think that's accurate about what our culture, how our culture is driven, and how we, are in our culture with other people to make sure that we give them this information to have knowledge and know the regulations? Does that sound pretty accurate?
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
really.
Okay, great, great. And and then we look at what does the job call for, and this could be different, but the job also matches the culture, and pretty much so. And the reason why that is because the main job there is the SLA position. And this is where everything happens. And again, the managers can be be the SLA, might be the only person in the store. And so thus the rewards culture of the job is pretty much the same. So what to motivate to have a motivated employee, if you will, a motivated SLA, if they are theoretical, in other words, what drives them is knowledge, and what drives them are this tradition and the regulations. If that drives them, they'll be motivated in the job. Now, for example, if I'm high aesthetic, that's number 5 there. And that's about, creative self-expression, beauty and nature. That if I'm an SLA, it's not about self-expression and beauty and nature and enjoying the experience. It's not about that. That what this is about is, hey, the knowledge that we have, the rules, regulations, understanding what that is. So a person that would be high aesthetic wouldn't be very motivated in this particular job. Another example is high social, helping other people. That it's not a driver, and it doesn't mean we don't want to help other people, but what is driving the organization is basically the knowledge. And like Cam had said earlier there, yeah, the number one theme that we had when we were discussing that was about the knowledge, the theoretical on how to be that way. And then the last, by the way, one, which again doesn't impact it other than to know what this job doesn't call for, it's not about being individualistic. Like if a person wants to be number one, this job isn't going to motivate them, because it's not about being number one. It's about knowing the knowledge. It's about knowing the regulations. And does everybody follow that? And how that how this motivates, how the job motivates is through knowledge and regulation. Makes sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. And this is just a graph. Again, we're going to blow through this. That basically we don't have any conflicting job requirements. Sometimes, like the job will call for, oh, you need to be a driver and real tough, and then you need to be steady and not tough, And so we don't have any conflicts like that going on. And I'd say about half the time, I just ran a job benchmark for a real estate broker in Colorado, and they had a conflict, and it was basically the influencer, a person outgoing, but they also wanted that person to be a C about the data. And typically, I's and C's don't get along very well. And so because the I is saying, hey, let's do everything real quick, we can get going. The C is quit all the BS and just give me the facts. And typically you don't have an IS or an SI that is there. So we have a real good job benchmark here. And then what this job calls for, and it's really interesting, and I was talking to Scott about this, that we reviewed this job benchmark and he loved it. And it's really interesting that this really calls for a C, this position, this sales position, we call it sales, lending associate, that a C, and a C is conscientious about data and facts. Normally, any sales position would be real high with an I. And it's like, hey, how are you? I'm going to try to sell you on buying this. Okay. That's not our job here. Our job is these people need us. They want our money. Okay. And so it's not about selling them. We don't have to sell them about, hey, we got the money. Okay. That what we need to do is we need to make sure we have this C in here, the conscientious, because with the C, that will be really focused on the data and the facts, and make sure it's real gold, to make sure the person is qualified, et cetera, all the activities do for them. And just to give you an idea on, the question might be, do we have any C's, any strong C's in the organization? Well, Scott, he has a strong C. Cam has a strong C. Desmond has a strong C. Adrian has a strong C. Angel has a strong C. Karen has a strong C. Logan has a strong C. Nemesis has a strong C. Piola has a strong C. Phil has a strong C. Ray has a strong C. And so almost the whole organization has a strong C. Okay. And so why did that happen? Because remember, what this job does, what this job benchmark does, is it shows us why people will stay with us, why they'll be good with us. And just naturally, if they have the talents the job calls for, if they are motivated the way the job motivates, and if they have the behaviors the job says, odds are they're going to be really successful, and they're going to want to stay with the company. And so that's why, through nutrition, so instead of hiring people that don't fit the job, we won't have to do that anymore. And what did we come up with? Diego went through 43 people and saved and add like 2 people that, those days are done with. We're going to assess people, do the trimetrics, and then we're going to do a gap report, and we can see whether or not they're a pretty good fit. Now, understand this also. Nobody's going to match this job benchmark exactly. Okay. That, it's like the ideal world. This is the ideal SLA that they have this. But we want to make sure that in most of the areas, they're pretty close. And you're going to see the gap report will help us do that. Now, the other thing, and in fact, as we get going here, that so you can see that it's a C there, and we're just going to go down all the way. I just want you to be aware of this, that there are actually interview questions. And to my understanding, the manager, right now, the way the hiring process is we're using sources to attract people. We get those people, and then Desmond, he looks at their resume, and then if it looks good, then we have the interview. And the manager of each store typically does the interviewing. And is that pretty accurate? Is that how we hire?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in your questions, I mean, there's some standard questions, but now you're going to know, like, let's say this person scores in the gap report that we're going to look at next. Let's say a person really fits the job well, but they're not very good at personal accountability. And so we'd like to hire them, but we need to understand where they are in a personal accountability. So one of the factors as a manager for each of you, or maybe to be a manager like Nemesis, that you want to ask when you do the interview, you want to ask behavioral questions. And so that means, so for example, personal accountability. Tell me a time, in other words, when did you behave when it was necessary to admit to others that you had made a mistake? And then just be quiet and see what they say. And how do you handle it? And give an example of where others have made an error or mistake and you had to take the blame for their actions. How do you feel about doing that? And so these are great questions that you're going to be able to look at and so Cam, that I do want everybody to have this job benchmark. And so when I say everybody, the managers, Nemesis too, that the managers to have this, because there are these questions. And the cool thing is you could just you could just print out just these pages, and it's basically 29, 30, 31, because it is basically the top 7 talents of the job. And then also, if they don't fit like theoretical or traditional, here are some questions to help, like theoretical. Which is more important, action or knowledge? Tell me more about that. Can you give an example where knowledge was important to your job, or where you use knowledge? Because we want to see not only can they understand this, but also we want to help them manage their expectations of this job. This job is not a regular sales job. This job is about knowledge. This isn't about us selling people. This is about we're giving away money here, in essence, okay? And that they want us. We just need to make sure that we're giving away some good money for whatever they're giving us back. And so some great questions on this, as well as behavior. And the main behavior questions would be on organized workplace, how well they analyze, and if they're persistent. And because this is what the job calls for, and so we can help manage their expectations. And let's see. And then here, by the way, are just a recap of how each respondent answered. And so, and again, you don't really need this, but it shows, notice the C, R1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can see that there R1 was Adrian, who his name is Jose, but everybody calls him Adrian because of his dad. And so, and again, you don't need that. But if you want to look at, hey, what were my answers, on this is a good way to be able to do that. And so with that, we are going to, do you have any thoughts or questions about the job benchmark?
No, I think that section with all the questions is going to be really helpful.
Yeah. And those questions are really, really good. And you'll see where you'll be able to do it. So what we're looking at now is the is the gap report. And each of you will be given, we've ran a gap report on you because we now have the job benchmark. And every time someone runs a TriMetrix, that will automatically, we will run also a gap report. So it's easy for you to see whether or not this is a good hire. Now, I'll look at this also and I'll make a recommendation to hire or not hire, even though I've never seen the resume, never interviewed them, that this is so accurate that, in fact, I have a great story about this that I was asked to be the president of the largest commercial cleaning company in the world. And they wanted me to go into a major market in the eastern United States. And they wanted me to kind of clean house, and they wanted to get a new manager, a new head of this market. And so what we did is we ran an ad, and we got 180 responses back. And so 180 people on this job. And so we first just looked at the resumes, and we broke it down to about 25 people that we were really interested in. And then we ran a trimetrics on all 25. We already had a benchmark, and we ran a trimetrics on all 25 of these applicants, of these candidates. And I can do a job comparison report comparing the job to all 25. And I knew who we would select. And so I basically told the CEO of the company, and we took the private jet out to the eastern US, to this major market. And I gave him, before we left, I gave him a sealed envelope because we were going to interview some of the top people. And I told him, keep this sealed, and this will be the person that you select. And he goes, but you haven't met any of these people. How can you do that? And I said, because this is so accurate that I can tell you who it will be the most effective, productive, best fitting person for this job. And understand also, when you ask the candidate, and we'll talk a little about that, but here later on, what would be the best way to incorporate this now, and maybe use the same process that we just started doing now, where we get people, and then Desmond maybe sends the assessment to them. But what we want to help people understand is, this isn't for them to take the assessment. It's not just for their good, our good, it's for their good too. It will help them, that because they might be in a job that it's not a good fit for them, and they won't be happy, and will be wasting their time. So this is to the benefit of all the people that maybe want to join our organization. Anyways, back to that story, is that so we spent 2 days interviewing, the top candidates, and finally the CEO made a decision on who to interview. And so he made that decision. I said, now open up the envelope. So he took out of his suit, opened up the envelope, and it was the same guy that he picked. And so, and again, I had never met them. So that's how incredibly effective this is. And then just another note is that when the candidate does do the trimetrics and we do hire them, remember all the good information in there. How to manage them, a page on how to manage them, a page on how to motivate them, a page on how to communicate with them, how not to communicate with them. You'll save 6 months in trying to understand the person. You'll be able to read that trimetrics on what we went through last week, and we have a video of that now for a training video for all of us, and to include, every SLA can watch that to understand what does this trimetrics mean, so they can better understand themselves. But it's a way for you to more effectively manage and motivate your people, and how to communicate and how not to communicate. And so does that sound like that would be helpful, instead of going through 43 people and keeping 2, that now we would really be able to see who's the best fitting person before we ever hire them. And then when we hire them, we'd save 6 months of trying to get to understand them, that we can just read their report and know how to effectively communicate with them. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yes.
Yeah, good, good. Okay, so this is Nemesis. Thanks again, Nemesis, for being a volunteer. And basically, this is the gap report on Nemesis. The white circle is the job. So, according to what we ideally wanted, we wanted to have a person at 84. Again, we're probably not going to have a person at 84, but we want to make sure they're in the range. And if you see that red line, you see personal accountability, and there's a red line there. That red line is 68% of the population falls into that category. Okay. And the national mean is 72%. And so when you look at Nemesis on what the job calls for is 84 and she's 69, it's like, that's a good fit. Okay. She's good there. But you'll see there's some other areas that, won't be good fits. And you can see self-management, she's right in there. She's very close, 10 points away, from it. She's great at teamwork. Okay. Goal achievement, she's better than what the job calls for. And so it's like, wow, because again, that little blue dot there is the person, and diplomacy. And so that's important. And again, that when I look at this, and you'll get used to looking at these, and you'll be able to figure it out. And you can always contact me if you have any questions about any people, about the report, or whatever. And in fact, I'm going to give you my cell number right now. And just if you ever need me, you can call me at 214 753 7204. Again, 214 753 7204. And you're going to also see, though, that there's one page that'll give you all this information. So you don't need to go through a lot of information in order to figure out whether they're a good fit. And if they're a good fit, on what do they need to develop. And so the good news is everything I'm taking you through right now, you actually won't have to go through. You'll go to the last page, and that'll give you the lowdown of what 21 pages here describe. However, you may have, hey, I want to dig into this more on, exactly what is personal accountability and where is she and, whatever. And then you could go up to the top of the report. But we have a summary of everything on the last page. And so again, going through this now, these, as we get further down here, they're not as important to the job. This is in order of the job. And so you can see, like, for example, the job, and it's number 11. Mainly we look at, when we look at competencies, it's the top 7 are the most important. The rest of them aren't. But if you look at, like you could look at number 11 and say, wow, empathy, that, it looks like Nemesis is very empathetic. Well, actually, she is. See, the national mean is she's within there, and she's actually above the national mean of 36. She's at 40. But this is what the job is calling for. But it's mainly the top 7. And again, you don't have to be too concerned with all this, because we have a summary page. But I wanted you to look at the detail on what it has. And so, like, conceptual thinking. The job, you don't need much conceptual thinking. Nemesis is really good at conceptual thinking. Okay.
Oh.
Now this might be helpful to you, though, the ability to analyze hypothetical situation or abstract concepts. So we may go to Nemesis and say, hey, Nemesis, how do you think we could increase the profit of the store? She'd be really good at that because she's good at conceptual thinking. And maybe she didn't even know that. And for sure, well, probably none of us knew that because again, we weren't told this. We've never done this assessment. Nobody's ever told us, hey, here's what your talents are. The good news on these talents is you can increase talents. So we can train people to become more talented. My behaviors are pretty much my behaviors. I can't change that too much, but I can tell them, what we expect of the job and also what motivates me. That pretty much I can't change that either. But these talents we can change. So, any thoughts on that? Questions, comments?
Nope. That's right. Anyway.
Okay, cool. And like presenting, number 25, look at that. The job, it's not about presenting, it's about making sure that they're presenting to us, who they are and what they have for us, And
All right now. Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. Yeah. And so should we just pause here and Nemesis, that why Adrian's reviewing that. Do you have any thoughts about especially like on your high on the important things to the job, the most important things to the job and where you are? Did you have any comments about any of that?
So the white dot is where we should be, right?
Well, where the ideal job is, yes. And so the white dot is, hey, the job is saying we would love to have people at 84, but you're good because you're at 69. You're in 68% of the population, and which is a very small red line there. If you look at teamwork, that it varies a lot more. So you're within the range, yeah. But that's the
Okay.
yeah. And so you basically are a good fit. And again, once you won't have to understand all the detail about this because the recap page will give it all to you in a nutshell. And so it'll be pretty cool to be able to do that. And so now going down to so theoretical, that now this is the rewards culture of the job. And so that theoretical, as far as knowledge is concerned, how motivating is it to Nemesis? It's somewhat motivating, but we're saying, wow, the job really motivates a lot on it. But it's not too much of an issue because, again, she's in the range and it's okay. And traditional regulatory and regulation, she's over the national mean. And so, again, in the ideal world, we'd like, every person to be real high theoretical and love knowledge. Knowledge doesn't motivate Nemesis as much as the job calls for, but that she is motivated though by traditional and regulatory, and those are the top two, and even utilitarian, wanting a return on investment. So again, as far as would she be motivated, she'd probably be pretty motivated in this. And now what about behaviors? And so, and this is pretty cool. Like, look at the behaviors that Nemesis is right in organized workplace. That look at the job and look at her. She has an organized workplace. She's an analyst that analyzes. She loves doing that. She's persistent. She's following policy. So, like, she's just about perfect on behaviors.
That's right.
And so, Yay, we like that. And and again, and remember, I don't want you guys to be hard on yourselves, with this, that nobody's going to match everything. And in fact, it's good that we know, at least we know this way, hey, what does the job call for and what areas could you improve in? You're a natural behavioral style to do the SLA position. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you'd be a good manager. Okay. And I'm not saying you're not going to be a good manager, but what I'm saying is that would be a separate assessment on what does the job benchmark, what does the job call for as far as a manager? Because that's where, like, it's important to manage and develop people. Well, remember that that's real low under this one. It doesn't matter. But if you're a manager, you need to be really good at managing and developing people. And so there's different talents for different jobs. What a lot of companies do is say, oh, you're good at this job, so we're going to promote you to manager. And it's two different jobs. They might be good or they might not. And do you follow that? Yeah, yeah. And so going down that, and these are the different behaviors. And again, it shows that the C is what, and who Nemesis is, just so you know, is that she's actually an SC and the job is calling for an S. So it's comparing kind of where she is. And, and then, and again, there's a lot of information here, but we don't need it. But this page, it's the last page. And basically, what this does is this says, hey, the talents or competencies of an individual of this job, these are the top 7. And then the top ways the job motivates are the rewards culture. And then the top behaviors that we have. So we're never going to get, like I've never seen, I've done thousands of these, whatever. We're never going to get an exact match. See, blue is exact match in every area. But if you look at Nemesis on what the job requires, and it's color coded, so it's real easy, that, hey, she is like an exact match in 3 of the talents, in 4 of the talents. And she's really good in the 5th one. And there's just 2, personal accountability and resilience, where she is fairly compatible in. And so it's like, oh, those are the 2 areas. And then again, we could go up and read the definition of personal accountability and, look at resiliency. And she's actually pretty good at it. It's just that it's comparing it to the job. And so based on the talents, these competencies of the 7, I would probably say a higher, because looking at just those, because 4 out of 7, she's there. Now, is she going to be motivated? And that is, the job is calling for to be motivated in the job rewards culture. How does the job and how motivated is she? And she's 2 green boxes, which means she's a good compatibility. The only thing is theoretical. Now, in my job interview with her, I could go back to the job benchmark and read those questions to her and ask those questions on theoretical. Tell me about knowledge on, when have you used knowledge for your, whatever questions those are, that it's, tell me about knowledge. This job requires a lot of knowledge. Every person that walks in is going to be a little bit different on their credit worthiness of what they're bringing us, et cetera. Every piece of jewelry is going to be a little bit different, that we need to have knowledge. And we want you to understand that theoretical, that this one is, you're not as compatible as everything else you are, because everything else you're really compatible. And so we want to manage her expectations. And then also, because now in this case, Nemesis is actually a SLA and helps Adrian, whatever, that Adrian and her could sit down and say, hey, let's talk about, as far as the job is concerned, personal accountability, that how do you think you could get better at that? Because remember, we can increase talent and these competencies and resilience. And so is there a time? So Nemesis, I'd even ask you right now on, and being, a real question, that like resiliency, do you find that like, oh, if someone says, hey, I'm not interested, they walk out, do you just kind of go like, okay, or, are you running after them out the door, trying to convince them or what? How resilient would you say that you are?
I mean, I guess it all depends on the situation.
Mhm.
At times I find that like, no, I will try and chase the sale. I will try and convince them. But if
Yeah.
I feel that they're serious, and working with
Mhm.
Adrian and Desmond, especially with like jewelry, for example, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, well, what did they offer you? And based
Yeah.
on that response, it's like, okay, like I kind of get the sense of like they're serious, they actually do want to purchase. Or
Yeah.
if they go ahead and straight lowball, it's kind of just like, well, you're really not even interested, so like I'm gonna go on and move on to
Yeah.
someone is.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that. And see, and it's back to this knowledge that you're really talking about here on that, and this theoretical that, hey, I have knowledge, and you've been taught by Desmond, Adrian, whatever on that. Hey, they're balling us on this. And so, and then maybe Adrian could say, or Adrian, what would your response be? Do you think there's an area to help Nemesis develop in being more resilient? We understood what she said and why she said it, and it made sense. Um, do you think that like maybe we could say, like, well, what is lowballing? And it kind of depends, in her example, like what, or if somebody lowballs us, what's a way for them to let them know in a nice way they're lowballing us, and that how can we counter offer? In other words, be more resilient and not just say, hey, this person's lowballing me, screw them, they can go someplace else. That what type of coaching would you do on that?
Exactly what you just said. I'd see what the offer was and also determine how long the item's been here. And then going off that, I'd say, well, what would be your counter on that? If item's up for $6,000, I've had it for, a year, and the guy offers me $3,000. I mean, well, tell me if you're, a little higher, maybe we might be able to close that deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good, good. And so, and again, it's really this awareness. And so, and none of us, and we want to help our people understand this. Don't take this personal as far as, you're bad and we're going to make you good. Like Nemesis is great. This is a hire, she basically has all these blues, like her behavior. She's like perfect. And she's an exact match in the behaviors of this job. She has 4 talents and, she's great. But what we want to do is help her with her awareness, because this really helps you. Like this helps Adrian, this helps both Adrian and Nemesis realize, oh wow, resiliency. That let's talk about that. Let's see, what does that mean? Resilient with what? And now we started talking about it, and now we realize, hey, that so if a customer walks out on Nemesis, that maybe Adrian goes to Nemesis and say, hey, just tell me about that. Why did they walk out? What happened? Do you think we could be more resilient? And now we're more aware of, oh hell, I want to be more resilient. We want the deal. We don't want people to walk, and that even though they're lowballing us, that hey, we're gonna have them highballing us, whatever. if there's such a word or concept on that. Yeah. And so and so then poor compatibility, that would be a red. Well, I can guarantee you that if we assess someone and before we hire them, so we don't hire anybody until we assess them from now on, and if they got a bunch of reds there, we're just wasting our time, you know? Let's not waste their time or our time. And this is why we have 43 terms, because we used the two most ineffective ways to hire people, but it's the most used ways. We use the resume, which never said that I got fired 2 years ago or whatever. Okay, so they put their best foot forward, but it's unreliable. It's an unreliable source. And then the second, so we use the resume, and then we use the interview process. And the interview process is unreliable because number one, we typically will be focused on the individual. Do we like them? Are they like us? It's not about whether they're like us. It's about are they like the job? And this is where we put the job first. We start with the job. We now have the job benchmark with these questions that you can use to really flush them out to understand where they are in certain areas that we want to see because they're a little deficient in or whatever, but also to manage their expectations. So this is what this job, requires. It requires resiliency. People will come in and lowball us. And so, and how do we be resilient and come back to them, and how do we counter them, or whatever, using this example. So hearing all of that, what do you guys like best?
I like, now I know how to start these conversations with, Nemesis or anybody else, SLA, and on how to be able to coach them up. I could actually really use sometimes.
Yeah. And again, I know there's a lot of pages, but now we realize that, that on the job benchmark, the main pages we want, you just print them out one time, is those questions, because if a person is low in resiliency or whatever it is, there's questions to ask them about it so that we get to know, how aware are they that they're, not strongly developed in, that area. And then again, as far as hiring, so your current people, we can develop. New people that we do hire, we know how to develop them now. Because otherwise they make a bunch of mistakes, and that's how we've been training. We try to give them some training, but then they make a bunch of mistakes, and we give them training. This heads that off. Means we know, by the way, on resiliency, that just using that example, on that we need to counter with them, that people will try to lowball us. And so by having that knowledge, and that's what our culture is about, theoretical, this knowledge, sharing the knowledge with our people to help them become more successful. That helps all of us, the company and everybody else, become more successful. And then finally, the if we decide to hire them or not, now we have all this information, and really this page could tell you whether or not be a real easy indicator. Again, if they have a lot of reds, if they're red and yellows, probably they're not a good hire for us. Okay, but if they're like Nemesis here, then hey, this is a good hire, because remember, we're not going to get the ideal job, but every person, and we can teach this, we can help people to increase their talents and become more successful. So with that, that's all I had for today. Do you guys have any other thoughts or comments?
No.
Okay, sounds great. And I think just the last thing that I want to make sure that we have on this is that the hiring process, and I'd just like to get your input on it, and we'll need Desmond to input on it also. But how do you think, so the way that it kind of would stand now is Desmond gets the people, well, Desmond and Cam will together, get the people and using different sources to attract people. Then we would assess them. And probably at this point, Desmond would, or the way it is now, it probably would then be Desmond would send out the assessment. They'd assess. I'd give a counsel as to hire or not hire. And then that assessment would be sent to the managers for them to look at and decide whether or not they want to interview or not. And then if you want to interview, again, you would use these questions and use the gap report to help understand. And so hearing that, is that how it should be, or is there a better way? For example, that the managers send out and have the first contact, with it, or what do you think is is there a better way than that?
I mean, as far as right now, I can only speak for my stores. I do get some of the resumes directly from Desmond, and I'm the one that makes the first contact at sometimes. So if I
Yeah.
got the resume and the assessment, then I could just determine whether or not to even bother asking. This.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So basically Desmond gets the resumes, hands it off to the managers. And right now, the way it is, you're supposed to just interview them. But now what we'll do is you'll get their assessment and their gap report. And then you can make the decision whether or not to hire them on that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Cam, your thoughts on that?
I do like the idea of the manager being the one to make the first contact, because they're not going to be working with directly under Desmond or directly under me. So
Yeah.
I think it's better to build that connection with the manager first. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like me and Desmond shouldn't really have that much say in the hiring process.
Yeah.
We should be there to guide or to just give like a second opinion.
Sure. Yeah. Provide input. Well, I like that. Do you know, would Desmond be up for that, or would you need to talk to him?
I need to talk to him.
Yeah, okay. So why don't we'll stop the video here, and so but to do that, I'm going to close it off, but stay on right now, everybody. And so thank you for attending this training on using the gap report in order to better see if we have a qualified candidate, and also to be able to train and develop our people in order to help them become more successful. So we thank you all, and we say goodbye for now.